This week, is Western separation something that concerns you? Also, what are the biggest challenges facing young people today? I'm Glenn McGuinness, and this is Outburst.
We're looking at a contentious issue that's been going on for quite some time.
If oil prices globally were higher than they are now, we might not be having this discussion.
I think it's something that definitely politicians, the Prime Minister, should take very seriously.
It's troubling because we need everyone at the table.
Tensions between the federal government and Western Canada is certainly nothing new. It's been going on for decades, and it's heating up once again. The Wexit movement, born out of frustration over the federal government's alleged treatment of Western Canada, is aspiring to cut some of those Western provinces out of Confederation. Alberta has some of the richest oil reserves on Earth, but lack of pipelines and a difficulty getting that oil to market, along with an equalization formula that has Albertans crying foul, has resulted in Wexit supporters wanting out. So, what do you think about this? Our question. Is Western separation something that concerns you?
It does. It concerns me because I think it's a whole Canada. It's like Quebec asking to separate. I'm French and I don't think it's a good idea. We've got a constitution written and signed. It should be that way.
No, I don't think that separation based solely on an industry is anything that would realistically come to fruition.
No. Alienation for sure. Separation, no.
Why?
I'd say currently it's sort of a bit of a joke at this stage. It's not being taken seriously, but I think that goes hand in hand why alienation is such a huge issue, because people don't take it seriously.
We're looking at a contentious issue that's been going on for quite some time. It's unfortunate it's taking on an American language, but I mean, that's the culture we have. We're an extension of the States as far as media influence goes. But yeah, absolutely. They bring in a lot. They should have maybe a heavier seat at the table, given what they are contributing. And I think maybe they feel that they've been taken for granted.
For sure, it concerns me. It's hard to satisfy all the disparate needs, and their economy is based on an unsustainable premise, but it's there now and we can't just abandon them. They've supported our country when we needed it most, and we got to help them through this hard time and transition into a different economy.
We are a nation that is really defined by our diversity, and we need all voices. So to have separation of any kind, it really is troubling because we need everyone at the table. And so these kind of bold moves, or at least bold talk, is really quite disconcerting. And yeah, I do get concerned about it. I listen. I've been following this quite closely, and it does concern me.
There's only one issue there. It's oil. The people who work in the oil patch want their jobs, but their jobs, there's just no way. If we're going to do anything about the environment, you've got to come down on the oil patch. And I don't know what they say out there, how much of an environmental awareness there is in those provinces, but it would seem to be like they're in denial. And I don't know how you overcome that.
Western separation is something that's been talked about, being from Alberta, something that we talked about and joked about privately with each other. Oh, we're going to separate one day. I wonder if it's not the fruit of underlying resentments and feeling ignored by the East. I think it's something that definitely politicians, the Prime Minister, should take very seriously, because I don't know about the viability of Western separation, but the fact that people are talking about it is very, very serious.
Western separation doesn't concern me that much, because I think that after the election, people are angry, and I think that anger will fade as the pain of the election starts to taper off a little bit, as well as I think that they kind of send a message with this movement, and people are going to have to make compromises.
I've lived out west. I don't think it'll ever happen. And if it did, I would be absolutely outraged. We're all in this together, good times and bad. And, in the past, when Newfoundland Fishery was paying for things outside of Newfoundland, nobody complained out west. And, it comes and goes.
It can be a concern. I am hoping that the country of Canada can work together so that we don't have to be faced with that.
Yes and no. I think the talk can get to be overwrought. It's very emotional. If oil prices globally were higher than they are now, we might not be having this discussion.
There have been a lot of separatist movements in Canada in the past, and I have no reason on the basis of those ones to worry seriously about the West separating.
I just think that's all talk, and no, I don't think it'll ever happen. I really don't. Look at Quebec. I mean, there's been plenty of reasons for that to happen many, many years, and it hasn't. We're still together, and we always will be out west as well, I think.
It's a real conundrum as far as I'm concerned, the having to continue in the fossil oil industry and support it, which is supporting Alberta. And yet, over the years, there's been many different attempts at looking at separation, which have gone nowhere.
Like, will it actually happen? I don't think it will actually happen. I don't think so it doesn't really concern me. It's more irritating hearing about it.
So I think it's a strategy. I don't think it could ever work in reality, but I think it's maybe not a bad thing to do to get noticed. I mean, they sent a pretty clear message during the election, not a single seat in either province, Saskatchewan and Alberta, right? So, but you know, the solution to try to reconcile that between the people who say, you know, no more pipelines, turn oil off today, and Alberta's economy based almost probably 95% on that. I mean, it's going to be a tough 4 years. There's a lot of really tough issues that don't have a simple answer at all. Like, I would not want to be Trudeau. I think he's in a really tough spot, yeah.
Canada's universal healthcare system has long been a source of pride in this country, but many people will tell you it's not perfect. Wait times have doubled since the early 1990s, and people are being forced to wait too long to get the health care they so desperately need. It's also resulted in some Canadians seeking treatment abroad and in the U.S. We sent our cameras across the country to get your ideas on a fix. Our question: how would you improve Canada's healthcare system?
I think that we should improve Canada's healthcare system through a much more participatory approach, by more conversations with people on the ground doing the work and trying to get feedback from what they need. I think a top-down approach is often misguided.
I think the wait times need to be increased, but then we're going to have to figure out where the money comes for that, right, as well too. So if we want more, we're probably have to step it up a little bit financially.
Well, Canada's healthcare system is lacking doctors, and I think there's lots of international graduates that are having a hard time getting jobs in Canada. So anything that can bring in more doctors, even if they are international graduates, to Canada would be fantastic.
How would you improve Canada's healthcare system?
I'd have to agree, definitely more doctors, also more mental health facilities and options and programs.
I think that bringing quality people into the workforce is very important, and giving people incentives to stay in healthcare, because people burn out quickly in Canada and they leave, and we lose a lot of good people that way.
I would like to see an improvement in doctors, see more doctors and not having a waiting list. And I would also like to see when you have appointments that you don't have a year or 2 years to wait. And I would like to see the administrator provide more funding.
I think maybe better access to dental, vision care as well would be a great improvement, especially for the elderly.
Better access for rural communities, to especially specialists, maybe a little bit more attention to ensuring reasonable access for all Canadians to the services that they need.
I think we need to do two things. We need to increase investment, but I also think we need to manage the investment we have now. I don't think we're doing a great job of unshackling all of our doctors and actually allowing them to use the resources at their disposal. So let's be more efficient with what we have, but also understand that we're growing, we're getting older. We also need more investment in that sector.
I don't know really what we can do, but I know they are using more the nurses that are nurse practitioners. I think that's some of the problem that will go away with that. Other than that, I'm afraid I don't really know.
Keep doing a lot of the same stuff. The attempts to try to privatize bothers me. And so I would tend to look at national pharmacare kind of programs, national dental programs, having all of the medical services covered rather than the piecemeal that's now.
I feel like sometimes our resources in the hospitals aren't used as effectively as they could be. And I think also just people being aware of what resources are out there in our healthcare system so that they're directed maybe to the right ones, so that there's not a lot of redundancy, seeing their family doctor and then going to emergency, and just maybe not getting the help they need right away. So maybe a little bit more education about what's available for people so that they're able to access the healthcare more effectively.
I do believe that the healthcare system is extremely helpful when it comes to urgent, life-saving needs, car accidents, immediate rescue. However, I believe that a lot of focus for actual healthcare, preventative healthcare, could be the attention placed on more natural approaches that are more sustainable for our bodies and the planet.
The number one thing that needs to happen is seriously looking at medically supplying opioids. I mean, I'm from Nanaimo and we really struggle, and that creates a lot of crime with people that have serious health condition and addictions, and they'll go to any lengths to get a hold of opioid drugs, and we got to realize that this is a serious medical condition and help them out. And obviously, you want to help people eventually get off that stuff, but if somebody's willing to be stealing and doing a lot of crime to get a hold of it and there's no other access to it, it's insane. And so I think we can take the pressure off the rest of the community that's having the crime increase because of that, and then that'll allow people to be much more willing to be like, hey, we also need to make sure that we've got proper detox and beds and rehab facilities, and I think a lot of the people too that are struggling with mental health and not able to live unsupported, we got to really start thinking about rebuilding our institutions where people can live in a more supportive environment and get on with it. So that would be a big message to the federal government, is we got to really start doing this, or else our communities, it's the municipalities that suffer at the end of the day. So
when it was first brought in, I think in the 1960s, there weren't so many things that could be done, not so many knee replacements, hip replacements, so now it's having to do so much more on a lower budget. I don't know. To get everyone to have everything, I think the whole budget would have to be on healthcare. I don't know if there's anything they can do to really get that one in check, to be honest.
Other than maybe have a combination of private and public, like so many of the European countries have successfully done, and yet in Canada, the second you talk about bringing in private, public, everyone just screams, oh my God, it has to be universal health care, only provided by the government. I think government is the worst at providing cost-effective solutions to almost anything.
To get more doctors in Emerge for our kids, our elderly, so they can get care as needed and not left for hours waiting to see someone.
Stop with the cuts, cutting the jobs, because everyone is overworked.
There's a lot of talk about universal pharmacare, which I think is a neat idea, and I know that the government's interested in talking about that right now. So that would be my bet.
I think that we should be looking at other jurisdictions to see how we could model ourselves to align better with those other jurisdictions to improve sort of the service gaps that are lacking in our healthcare system. And that's sort of in a very generic sense, but we do need to conduct a scan to try to address the issues.
I think the biggest challenge that we're facing right now is the mental health crisis. So I think that there really needs to be a bigger emphasis on taking care of mental health.
I would invest more in our infrastructure and more in our services. I don't think that in order to save the deficit, you have to take away. The more we take away from social services such as healthcare and education, I think the more we're going to see it go downhill. So I think it's reinvesting.
We need some kind of a privatization in the healthcare system. And otherwise, slowly it's sinking. I mean, it's not getting better, it's getting worse.
The name Labrador, as in Newfoundland and Labrador, is derived from which language? Portuguese, French, or Italian?
Italian. I would say French.
Portuguese.
I think it'd be French.
Portuguese?
It's Portuguese.
Oh, okay. Good.
Very good. The name Labrador is derived from the Portuguese word lavrador, meaning farmer, plower, or laborer. The peninsula of Labrador was likely named after João Fernandes Lavrador, a Portuguese explorer from the late 1400s. He charted the region and southwestern Greenland and relayed the information back to Europe. A European map from 1532 is one of the earliest references to the region being named after someone from the Azores Islands. It was previously referred to as Terra Corterialis in Europe. Historically, Canada's economy has fared well despite turbulent times. A great example of that is how we prospered during the 2008 global recession. But Canada's economy has slowed sharply in the third quarter, partially due to a drop in exports, which could result in slower growth in the coming months. So we sent our cameras out to ask Canadians how we can improve our finances. Our question: what is your advice for the federal government to keep Canada's economy strong?
Ugh, I don't know. I'm on the fence on that one because I care about the environment, but then I also realize that the economy is really important as well. So, and I'm not 100% sure what the actual environmental impacts are going to be on the pipeline, or with the pipeline.
To take probably a pretty good look at the details of how we're spending and possibly misspending our money in social services, areas of child and family services. I think that there's a huge amount of misspending going on due to some probably inappropriate choices of power, and I think a revamp on the entire system in child and family services would be a great service to all of Canadians, and first and foremost the kids who need the help and the people who are given the power to help them.
Bill Morneau, as finance minister, again, has to, I think, step up a bit more and be more attentive to business and not let Trudeau run the whole show like he has. You know, he's run all the ministries for the past 4 years, so I think they need to be more aware about the softening business conditions, because there's a lot to talk about a recession coming, and there was nothing in their platform really about that, about what they were going to do to deal with that. So, I mean, I hope Morneau gets a little bolder and steps up a bit more.
Oh, it's hard to say. Economies have a way of just moving on their own, irrespective of what governments do. It seems to me that people put too much stock in the ability of governments to move the needle one way or the other.
Our economy actually should be like broad, and we should be exporting a lot of different countries, and not we are at the mercy of the U.S. If the U.S. today say, "Hey, I put an embargo, I'm not dealing with you," we are doomed.
I think we have to think of environment first and not our pockets. We have to stand strong to do the right thing, and sometimes doing the right thing isn't necessarily the easiest, but is the best way.
Basically, I'd say try and build that pipeline, get the oil and gas resources going again. Like I said in the last time I was here, that's the best advice I can really give, because there's going to be a lot of tug and pull. There's going to be not a lot of, like I said, conservative premiers working with Justin Trudeau. So the best advice is to be able to prepare for all-out battle. It's the best I can tell you.
I think my best advice for the government to keep our economy strong is a diverse approach and looking forward to the future with renewable energies and a strong investment in innovation. I think as our country changes demographically and in terms of its challenges, especially when we look at a changing climate, we really need to bright minds, and we need to be responsive. And so investing in innovation is a key way to do that.
I think to keep our economy strong, to diversify energy, I think that Alberta needs help. Alberta needs help. That's been a province that traditionally has been very strong in the energy sector. Now things are changing in Alberta, and I think investment there and the people there, in the greening of the economy, in the diversification, in the greening of the energy sector there, in the greening of the just greening of the sector generally. I think that's a great place for investment, because that's traditionally been an economical driver in Canada. So I think looking at Alberta differently and helping there, I think would be a good thing economically for all of us.
I think to keep our economy strong, we have to invest in renewable energy, especially more wind energy in areas. We are still a resource-based economy, so it would be good to see more of our natural resources have ability to be transported internationally and create new opportunities for resources that are currently being sent to only like one market.
Continue the global trend away from fossil fuels. We need to focus on climate change and be an international leader in that industry. And I think if we could do that, we could create a great new industry in Canada that is quite small today.
Get more of the younger people involved in them. I think they have a lot to offer.
I think putting more focus on small businesses, I think is a good step in the right direction.
Don't focus so much on export-led growth and think a little bit more about how do we increase our sovereignty around the production of things like food, things that all Canadians need.
I think continue to foster innovation and supporting smaller businesses. There's a lot of incubators and a lot of smaller companies out there who are trying to make things happen. Let's open up the doors. Let's remove any obstacles to their growth.
Every generation can speak of the challenges they have faced, and over the decades, those challenges have been different. In today's day and age, the challenges of young people can be considered unique and even different from those who came before them. So for our next segment, we set out to ask you what those hurdles may be. Our question: what are the biggest challenges facing young people today?
First off would be housing. I think especially here in Vancouver, it's just way too expensive. So I think they need to find a way to get the price of that down. Also, I think childcare for young people, that's so expensive too. I just don't know how anyone affords to have children anymore. So I think that's something they have to work on.
Oh, basically to have hope that they can even hold a little piece of ground for themselves and the potential of being able to have a family in the future seems almost unattainable for a lot of youth. The choice to go into trades or the choice to get a degree or the choice to become an entrepreneur, how are they going to make their best choice in today's world? It's all a risk. And there's not necessarily security in any of it.
Fundamentally, I think that they need to feel that there's a vision of the future and be part of building that. I think that we don't include our young people enough in meaningful action, and a lot of times they're cooped up in schools and this doing busy work, where we need to really be rebuilding our communities, making them more environmentally sustainable, rebuilding our social services. And there's a lot of important work that youth can do right away, and I think that we need to be providing those services, and then also taking mental health seriously. Like, why are a lot of youth struggling with depression and anxiety, and what's causing that? Is there not enough access to exercise and being outside and engaging in meaningful activity, and make that a #1 priority, because time goes by really quickly, and it'll be that group that'll be running the show, very shorter than later.
Not to despair too much. They got to stop looking at their phones all the time. Just live a little. I think information overload is part of it, and get to have real social lives. And I know there's so much more drinking than there used to be. Just try not drinking for a while, and drugs and all that. I'm a big fan of these things, but they need to know about moderation. I'm amazed by how many people binge drink.
So I do kind of like how back in the day you could get a job easier when you were 12 years old. Now you can't get a job unless you're almost 18 out of school, right? So I think they should go back to letting younger people kind of start work early, even if it's volunteer work. I think
one of the challenges I'm aware of for young people are training for jobs. So they might know where they want to go, but getting the funding for training, paying for school, it's really difficult for a number of young people that I know right now. So I think that's a priority for a lot of them. It's just like, I know where I want to get to, but how do I get there? The world's becoming increasingly competitive. And I think as well too, just like university is getting harder, high school is harder, the schedules they have are out of control, and then they're managing huge debt loads.
No one my age can afford a home anymore. And it's a big problem, and eventually something is going to have to happen, or I don't know what's going to happen.
What do you think are the biggest challenges?
I'd have to agree that the price of housing, even in Halifax, and rentals, it's hard for youth or people our age to find a place that's affordable to live.
So maybe the biggest challenges facing young people today, social media, I think is a tremendous challenge for young people. They're constantly bombarded by images, false information, bullying. It's just, I think it's really difficult to be young today compared to maybe when I grew up.
I think the biggest challenge is seeking out opportunities as the world just constantly changes. The days of the nuclear family, the white picket fence, I think have passed us. I think we need to be more proactive for the economy. We need the youth to step up and actually develop the skills they need for the next generation.
If you compare my generation with my parents, there's a tighter gap than what you'd see between me and my own children. And I think that disconnect has grown considerably, especially when you consider the cultural influence on a global scale. You're seeing a lot of change within a small gap, and it's wonderful, but that's going to cause some growing pains.
I think that when it comes to social media and just being able to sort of handle, an evolving world with the internet and everything that's coming on with social media, bullying, I don't really think that we're in a position right now to really take care of that. And again, it kind of ties into the mental health crisis and taking care of those, even the youth.
Lack of personal support, so personnel support, I would say. So for every kid, we're mandated to be one educator, one teacher for a really group, and that really cuts the individual approach that we should have for kids. I think that if we would have more personnel, it would allow for more kids to not go under the wire, like escape the system type thing.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on the Cable Public Affairs Channel. I'm Glenn McGuinness. If you have any comments or question ideas about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. It's your turn to speak up, and we're listening.